Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going from this to looking like this. So you guys just saw, I just upgraded to BFG KM3s. Those are 285, 75, 17, which works out to be about a 34-inch tire. Well, not really. I'll show you guys later. Now, I had a little bit of rubbing when I left the tire shop in reverse, right on my driver's side, but it ended up not being that bad, so I just drove it home. It was just rubbing up against the plastic liner. But when I got it home, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't gonna have any rubbing issues, especially for daily driving. So I took it apart and I'm gonna show you guys some footage on what I did to actually make it clear a little bit better. And also I wanted to try out my new air hammer tool. So you can see here, this is the pinch weld. It's right above the pinch weld where it's starting to rub. And I wanted to make sure that I cleared this out. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull apart this fender liner here and kind of just hold it up out of the way. And I'm going to take my air hammer to it and try to pound it back just a little bit. I don't really have the suspension fully flexed, but I wanted to make sure that I at least clear it for daily driving, because that's when the wife's actually going to be driving with me and hearing all these weird noises. So yeah, let's get back into the footage and start hammering away. So here you want to make sure you're careful and you don't actually punch a hole right through your firewall here, or whatever this thing is. So you can easily do that, so just be careful. I went a little slow here on some of the spots. That metal is actually pretty soft back there, and the only part that's really tough is where the pinch weld is, and I tried pounding on that a lot just to kind of push it back a little bit, but it wasn't moving anymore. So you can see here I go a little bit above the pinch weld. That's where I was rubbing on the tire earlier, and it actually moves back pretty easily. Just a couple little taps with the air hammer and it actually goes back quite nicely. So just take your time, and it's kind of awkward because I'm right-handed here and this is the driver's side, so it's kind of hard to hold it. And you can see I keep missing, and actually I think I hit some things back there on accident even, but it is what it is. So here I put the fender liner back a little bit. It's not where it's going to permanently be, but I noticed that that back part is actually sticking out quite a bit, so I decided just to cut it off. There's really no purpose for it. I did keep some of it because I don't want stuff going in that little hole right there, right behind the door. So that's all I kept, and I'm actually going to fix this up later, but I left it the way it is for now. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this area. I'm actually going to spray paint it later, and you'll see that. But we're going to move to the front, and I'll show you where I'm rubbing there. So up here you can see it rubs right there on the bumper. Ow. There's the bumper. That's where it's making contact. So I'm just going to cut that little triangle out. Should still look good. And that'll clear. So one thing I wanted to note here is that I still have my 1.25-inch spacer on, and I found out later that I actually didn't need it. I thought it wasn't going to clear the upper control arm, but it ended up clearing, and so once you move the wheel in more, it probably wouldn't have made contact here, so just keep that in mind. The TRD off-road offset seems to clear that SBC upper control arm pretty well. I actually tested it after the fact. It also ended up clearing the frame as well, so I didn't need spacers at all. So just rechecking for clearance again here and just making sure that it actually spins properly. As you can see, it does. Earlier it was actually hitting the bumper. I couldn't even turn the wheel all the way. So it looks good now. And you can see the clearances are pretty tight in there, but it does clear, so I'm satisfied. And I'm going to shoot some paint on it now. So here I'm just using a satin black paint. You can just go to any hardware store and buy a can. There's nothing special about it. Normally what you do behind the tire here, or this fender area, is you actually have to seam seal it. Now I don't think I actually went through or punctured any holes, so I decided I'm just gonna paint it and call it a day. Here's the other side. We're gonna do pretty much the same thing. Already took a measurement, it's about that much. Alright guys, so I wanted to show you guys the passenger side just because I had a little bit more trouble, but I had to pound this guy down all the way, maybe even pound up here a little bit up, and then this guy a little bit back. Now I could have moved the caster forward, but enter problem number 2. This guy starts hitting, and then my bumper, I already cut a lot of it off, a lot more than the other side, and I'll have to cut even more if I move it forward. So here I wanted to point out that I used a 80 grit sandpaper on a flap wheel, and I sanded down that pinch weld, so that way it'll actually go down even more. So I didn't film any of that, but I ended up putting everything back together. You can see down there I used a button kind of thing instead of the original bolt, since that one sticks out a little bit, and it seems to help. And I also cut that fender liner as well, like the other side. And then I also use a heat gun, and you can see as I kind of go to the side here that it's nice and flush with the fender, or at least pretty close, so that way it doesn't rub. And then up front, I didn't do anything special, just sanded it down a little bit and then painted it. And I didn't ruin the shape of the ARB bumper, fortunately, but I did have to cut more on this side than the other side. And I did end up having to put that washer fluid cover back on in the event that the tire actually does hit it. I'm pretty sure it's going to hit when I fully flex it because it's pretty close. And then same thing on the other side. I used the button here on the bottom again, just so that it wouldn't hit. It used to actually hit that bolt head before. And then I also cut that fender liner the same way the other side, or I showed you guys earlier, so that it fits a little bit better in there. And also in the front here, you can see I cut a little bit less material, but overall pretty much the same shape. Alright, so here's how she looks with the 34s on. I do still have that 1.25 inch spacer on there, so it sticks out a little bit, but you can see it fills up that wheel well pretty well, and it sits a lot taller. Actually still fits in the garage, thank goodness. And then here's the other side, and you can see those tires are a lot more aggressive than the Wild Peaks that I had earlier. So I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. So I wanted to show you guys something interesting. I still have that old Toyo Open Country MT. This one is a 285/75/17 as well, so same specs as the KM3s. And I'm going to put it side by side here so you guys can kind of see how they kind of measure up against each other. Keep in mind that this Open Country MT actually is worn down quite a bit, probably half its tread is gone. And you'll still see that it's actually still taller than the brand new KM3s. Now I know the weight of the truck isn't on this tire, but you know, still it's pretty drastic. And you can see here it's about almost an inch difference. It probably would be an inch if that MT was full tread. And you can see here even the width, you can't really tell, but you can see on the screen here that it's about ½ inch difference in width. So these KM3s are pretty narrow compared to that Toyo MT. So if you want a true 34, I'd probably go with the Toyo MT. If you want a smaller 34, like what I have here, so that way it fits better, then you can go with the KM3. The KM3 is probably more close to a 33 than a 34. So driving around with 34s have been a little bit interesting. I wanted to share my experiences with you guys. So I've been driving around with them for a couple hundred miles now, and I noticed that my 4Runner is a lot slower. It's pretty sluggish now, and I do have 4.3 gears. I might have to upgrade my gearing one day to 4.88s or something, but it's still decent. I can still drive around. I know that the engine is working a little bit harder now. My speedometer is way off, that's for sure. And I know my brakes are working a little bit harder because I can actually smell the brake dust in the back now. My MPG's probably suffered about 1 to 2 miles per gallon. I think my last fill up I got 11 miles per gallon. On my last set of tires I had 12 to 13 for city driving, and so it's definitely gone down. Now I know the MPG calculation is a little bit off because I have to account for the new tire size, which I did. So those are pretty accurate MPG ratings. The ride has definitely been a lot stiffer because of the new tires. I do ride them at 32 PSI, so that's pretty normal for street. You know, every little bump and the road, I can definitely feel it. Especially at lower speeds, you'll feel those knobs in the mud terrain tires. The noise level isn't too bad for a mud terrain. I actually haven't noticed it that much. I definitely do hear it when I'm slowing down and on turns. On the highway, I hear more wind noise than anything, but I can definitely say they're definitely louder than the Wild Peaks. I definitely noticed them in the car, but you can still have a conversation, and really, I don't really notice it that much, but we'll see how long it lasts. And one thing I wanted to mention was those tires have been giving me a lot of problems with the tire balancing. And I took it to 2 different shops now. The original shop that put my tires on, they couldn't balance it. They told me it was my wheel spacers or my suspension, and I told them my suspension was brand new. I took the wheel spacers off. They tried to balance them again, and they even put it on 2 different machines to check the balance, and they said everything was good, and it still was shaking at 50 miles an hour or 45. You know, my speedometer is a little off. And so I kind of gave up on them, and I took it to America's Tire because they actually fixed my Wild Peaks before, and I went there and they balanced my tire, and they told me 3 out of the 4 were out of balance, but even then it was still shaking. So I took it back to them today, and I told them, let's just focus on the 2 front tires for now. And one of these service advisors told me, let's try to do a road force balance, and let's see if that helps. And so the road force balance actually did work. And so what they do is they put a load on the tire and actually balance it that way, and they actually move the rim and tire configuration if they need to as well. There's actually a marking on the tire. It's usually like a yellow dot or a red dot or something like that, and you're supposed to align that with the valve stem. And a lot of tire shops don't do that because I don't know why, they're just lazy or something. After they did all of that and they balanced it again, I'm happy to report that I was able to drive home without any shaking, and I actually went pretty fast, and I noticed that there wasn't any shaking anymore. So finally got my tires balanced after the 4th try. So the last thing I haven't tested is the off-road performance. So I do plan on hitting some trails up in the spring or summer here. It's starting to get warm enough where the trails are actually opening up again. So if you're interested in that, subscribe to my channel and I'll make sure I post them when they're available.